So hello students and welcome back to another video tutorial from Genome Biotech. And as always, today I would be your host, Dr. Nitin Wahi, talking about the globular proteins. So what are these globular proteins? How these globular proteins differs from fibrous proteins, and how the structure orientation of this globular protein is different from the fibrous protein. As I have already told you, that proteins can be broadly classified into two different categories. One, it could be a fibrous protein. Secondly, it could be a globular protein in nature. Now, what is the basic difference between the fibrous protein and globular protein, and how these proteins have been categorized? That we have to see. Okay. When you are looking towards the fibrous protein, I have already told you that fibrous proteins were collagen, keratin, elastin. Fibrous proteins are elongated proteins, something like this. These proteins will be referred to as the fibrous protein. In the structure of fibrous proteins, you have seen that there are alpha helical structures which are quite elongated in length. These proteins have higher tensile strength, and those are referred to as fibrous proteins. But when you talk about the globular protein, for example, when you are going to talk about a protein that is referred to as myoglobin, you're going to talk about hemoglobin, you're going to talk about any other different type of a protein which has an ability to interact with water molecules, then such type of proteins will be referred to as the globular proteins in nature. Now, how does these globular proteins act? What is the functioning of these globular proteins, and in which manner these globular proteins are going to function? That we are going to look forward. Now, how these globular proteins are going to function, that we have to see. See, if you look towards the structure of globular proteins, so globular proteins has a unique three-dimensional structure. This would be the structure of globular protein. They have a unique three-dimensional structure. Okay, unique 3D structure. Okay, they have a unique 3D structure, and this 3D structure is responsible for their catalytic function. Okay, just removing this out. Now, they have this unique 3D structure which is responsible for their respective function. You look at the topological sites which have been exposed. These sites which have been exposed, they contain hydrophilic amino acid residues, and those hydrophilic amino acid residues have the ability to interact with molecules such as water. And as they can interact with molecules such as water, so they forms hydrogen bond with water molecules, and thus they can effectively dissolve in water. See, your blood can dissolve in water because blood hemoglobin can form hydrogen bond with water molecules. Okay, but the fiber like structures of your hairs, collagen, keratin, all these can never get dissolved in water. For example, look at this structure. Do this structure, you think that your hairs will dissolve in water? No, they can't, because they are all fibrous proteins. So see, that is why fibrous proteins are not solubilized with water molecules. They cannot get solubilized within the water molecules. Okay. Now, looking at the structures of why these fibrous proteins then are required, they have very high tensile strength. They constitute the extracellular matrix of the cell. What is an extracellular matrix? For example, there is one cell. Okay, there is another cell which is present outside in your body. Then there is a matrix which is present in between these two cells. This matrix is referred to as the extracellular matrix, and such type of proteins forms the component of the extracellular matrix. In my previous lecture, I have clearly explained to you that collagen is the most abundant extracellular protein which is present in the case of vertebrates, and it is an extracellular protein. Sorry, so it is an extracellular protein which is present. Okay, now let me just talk about the structure of myoglobin and finish the structure of myoglobin. So how is the myoglobin structure being oriented? When you look towards the structure of myoglobin, what you are going to find and how this structure is being oriented. So myoglobin is a globular protein. Okay, it is a globular protein, and it is made up of 153 amino acid residue. This protein is actually made up of 153 amino acid residue in nature. Okay, and has a single heme group. These information are very much given in your Pathfinder, that book you always have with yourself. So I would not be going into the great details. But before you move forward to myoglobin, let me explain something to you. And for that, I'm taking a whiteboard. You will get the image of a particular whiteboard in front of you. Okay, so you would be looking at the whiteboard. Okay, so all of you are looking at the whiteboard now. Okay, see, we can say that there was a protein which was once named as globulin. See, I'm writing it down so that you can note it down. Globulin. This protein, which was referred to as globulin, got categorized into two different types. This protein got modified into two different types. One was referred to as, one went into the animals, and this globular protein, which was found in protozoans, entered into animals, animal kingdom. And another protein, the same protein, even entered into the plant kingdom. The same protein entered into plant kingdom. Okay, plant kingdom. In the case of animal kingdom, this protein gave rise to two other different categories of protein. One was referred to as the hemoglobin, another one was referred to as the myoglobin. It gave rise to two other category of proteins. One was referred to as hemoglobin, and another protein which was being produced was referred to as, was later on called as myoglobin. So this is how the orientation, this is how the evolution took place. The first one was hemoglobin. I'm just writing it out here. Hemoglobin. And another one was referred to as myoglobin. Okay, I would be writing the second one here. Myoglobin. Sorry for the inconvenience caused. Okay, we can look here. That would be fine. Okay, so these were the two different types of proteins that were being produced, hemoglobin and myoglobin. Now see this, there is a considerable difference between these two proteins. Now what is the difference and how those differences can be understood, that we are going to see. Okay, sorry, I have to make an arrow. Probably I can. No, I am not able to. Okay, so now in the case of plant kingdom, the same globin protein give rise to another category of proteins that even is referred to as leg hemoglobin. You could have understood that point. Leg hemoglobin. It led to the formation of leg hemoglobin protein. And this leg hemoglobin protein is found in the family that is referred to as Leguminosae. Leguminosae. This is referred to as the Leguminosae. Okay, the family Leguminosae was being included into it. Okay, so this is the family that is referred to as Leguminosae, and this Leguminosae family has been included into this particular category. Okay, so they are the one that are able to have hemoglobin molecules present within themselves. Now, what is this Leguminosae family, and how does these Leguminosae family perform all these functions? That we will have to even visualize. Okay, so what is the function of this leg hemoglobin in Leguminosae? So that we are going to visualize through a particular animation in front of us, that how does this leg hemoglobin act. Okay,
to make.
So I would be sharing a 1-minute video with you all. Just a minute. Just a minute. Okay, I'm sharing the video with you all. I'm sharing a video with you all, so that you can understand the concept of this Leguminosae family and the and how does this leg hemoglobin work in the case of Leguminosae plants. Okay, so see this.
Friends, like us, plants also require a lot of nitrogen to make.
See, plants require lots and lots of nitrogen to biosynthesize the nitrogenous molecules like nucleic acid, etc., within themselves. So they synthesize this nitrogen molecule. They synthesize the nucleic acid by fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. The atmospheric nitrogen is being fixed with the help of an enzyme which is referred to as dinitrogenase complex, and this complex helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. Now, how it allows or how it helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, that we have to visualize.
Make proteins. So they absorb nitrogen continuously from the soil, due to which the amount of nitrogen becomes deficient. As you all know, that there is 78% of nitrogen present in our atmosphere, but plants cannot use it in the manner directly as they can use carbon dioxide. They require nitrogen in soluble form. The bacterium called Rhizobium can take atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into a soluble form. These bacteria live in the roots of gram, peas, mung beans, and other legumes and provide them with nitrogen. In return, the plants provide food and shelter to the bacteria. Thus, we can say that Rhizobium shows a symbiotic relationship.
Of course, Rhizobium shows a symbiotic relationship, and these plants have a specialized hemoglobin molecule present within themselves. And that hemoglobin molecule, which is present in these plants, is referred to as leg hemoglobin. And it is this leg hemoglobin that is responsible for protecting the dinitrogenase enzyme complex that is present. And because this dinitrogenase enzyme complex is the one that gets destroyed in the presence of oxygen molecules, okay, so that is why there is the leg hemoglobin. You can visualize the leg hemoglobin here, and this is present with the family Leguminosae. The presence of hemoglobin in the case of plant as well as in the case of animals indicates that yes, there is a connecting link. Yes, there is a connecting link, and that hemoglobin has evolved in the case of protozoans much before the evolution of animals as well as before the evolution of plants. Okay, now when you look towards the structure of hemoglobin and myoglobin, what you find with the structure of myoglobin is that this is a tertiary protein. Tertiary protein, as it is a tertiary protein in nature, so it assumes a unique 3D structure, unique three-dimensional structure, okay, which is functional in nature. Whereas the myoglobin which is present, whereas the hemoglobin which is present, it is not a tertiary protein. It is a quaternary protein in nature because it is made up of more than one subunit. It is a quaternary protein in nature, and this quaternary protein is made up of four different subunits, and these four different subunits are 2 alpha and 2 beta in the normal cases, okay, but there are several different types of hemoglobin. Actually, the hemoglobin can be categorized into the following four different types, okay. So basically hemoglobin is of four different types in the case of humans. One is referred to as the fetal hemoglobin, one is referred to as the embryonic hemoglobin, the second one is referred to as the fetal hemoglobin, the first one is referred to as the embryonic hemoglobin, embryonic hemoglobin, okay. Second one is referred to as the fetal hemoglobin. I would be representing hemoglobin with HB only because I had to write certain characteristic features of each and every hemoglobin in front of them, okay. So this is embryonic hemoglobin, this is fetal hemoglobin. The third one is referred to as the adult A2 hemoglobin, and the fourth one is referred to as the adult hemoglobin. So these are the basically four different types of hemoglobin. Let me not move out of the screen, that is why I have reduced this out. Adult hemoglobin, adult A1 hemoglobin, okay, hemoglobin. Now what is the basic difference between all these different types of hemoglobin? See, all of these hemoglobins are found in ourselves only. They are present in Homo sapiens, they are present in humans. The difference lies in the alpha and the beta subunits that are associated with the hemoglobin molecule. Different alpha and different beta subunits are being associated with each hemoglobin molecule, making them completely different from each other. So what we get here is that in the case of embryonic hemoglobin, there are 2 zeta and 2 epsilon naught. I'm not getting anywhere zeta or epsilon naught, so I would like to draw them. Okay, so there would be 2. This is really very hard to draw. 2 epsilon naught and 2 zeta. Now how to make zeta into it? Okay, 2 zeta. This would be zeta. So there is 2 epsilon naught and 2 zeta making the embryonic hemoglobin. Okay, then there would be 2 alpha and 2 gamma, 2 gamma subunits that will make the fetal hemoglobin. There would be the adult hemoglobin A2, 2 alpha and 2 delta. That would make the adult A2 hemoglobin, and the adult A1 hemoglobin is made up of 2 alpha and 2 beta. Actually what happens is that majority of the students are only being told about the only hemoglobin being the adult A1 hemoglobin. Other hemoglobins are never being taught to you in your regular classes. So majority of the students didn't know that actually each and every individual has 4 different types of hemoglobin during your lifespan. When you were an embryo, when we were an embryo, then we have 2 zeta, 2 epsilon naught, 2 zeta. Then there was a 2 alpha, 2 gamma. You can remember it from ma. Ma means mother. Mother means that she is having a child, that is a fetus. Fetus is also post embryonic state. So fetus has 2 alpha, 2 gamma proteins. Okay, there is an adult hemoglobin that is referred to as 2 alpha and 2 zeta. And then the last one that is present in the case of Homo sapiens in us, and that is being represented as 2 alpha and 2 beta. So these are the different types of hemoglobin which are being associated with the case of humans. Okay, now moving forward, what we have to look forward is that now see, there is a question which has been asked. The question was being asked in CSIR net entrance examination. What was that question? Let us look at that question. There are queries of the students. So how non-leguminaceae plants take up nitrogen? See, first, non-leguminaceae plant, there is no higher eukaryotic organism that has the ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen. Higher eukaryotes cannot fix atmospheric nitrogen. It is only the lower prokaryotic organisms that have the capability to fix atmospheric nitrogen. There is no eukaryote which can fix atmospheric nitrogen. Eukaryote or plant can fix atmospheric nitrogen only with the help of bacterium. It holds the bacterium such as rhizobium, etc. within themselves. Now see, your question being how non-leguminous plant take up the nitrogen. They take up the nitrogen from the soil. The soil is a rich source of nitrogen. So they are the one who are going to take the nitrogen from the soil. Okay. So this is what happens with the case of plants. See, if you look towards plant and you look towards animals, there is a symbiotic relationship that must be known to you all. See, every ruminant means cow, buffalo, that is being used in our household purposes in the ancient history of India. All these animals secrete certain waste, and that waste is called as nitrogenous waste. Animals always produce nitrogenous waste. For us, for all the animals, nitrogen is a waste because our growth becomes halted. Our growth is halted, or our growth stops after a period of time. Okay, so you are not growing now. We are all grown ups now. Our growth is not going to take place. Only the maintenance of our body is going to be taking place. So we are going to excrete out all the nitrogen. So that nitrogen enters into the soil, and those cow dung and other buffalo dung, they contain very large amount of nitrogen. That is why those were being used as fertilizers for the plants, because plant take up these manures or nitrogen from the fields, from these excretory materials of the animals. Okay, now next question which has been asked, from manure, or do these bacteria also have symbiotic relationship? Yes, several bacteria have symbiotic relationship. Rhizobium has symbiotic relationship. Anabaena, nostoc have symbiotic relationship. So there are so many which have symbiotic relationship. But when you are asking this question, please do note, not all bacteria have symbiotic relationship. That is not a compulsion. Symbiotic relationship is present in almost 90% of the bacteria, those which are fixing nitrogen, but not all. For example, if you take the case of there is a bacteria, just a minute, and there is the bacteria oscillatoria or something like that. I will just come to that particular name, but that is an obligate free living nitrogen fixing bacteria. So there are several different types of bacteria, those which are free living, and they have the ability to fix the atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, so it is not a compulsion that all bacteria are symbiotic, but majority of the bacteria are symbiotic. Okay, Ramalika, so I have solved your query. Now there is a query by another student. All of you can put your queries and I will answer one by one. Do these bacteria form symbiotic relationship? I have already answered. From manure or from the soil or from bacteria? Yes, yes, yes. You have answered. Okay, dinoflagellates. Yes, Frankia. So Frankia was there, and other bacteria are also there, which are able to fix this atmospheric nitrogen. So probably Krishna sir is answering the questions. Okay, thank you, Krishna. Thank you all. Okay, so now we are going to move forward. Another message. Thanks. Okay. So now the question which was being asked in CSIR. So what was that? Now see this. This question was being asked in CSIR, and this is a very important question. The question states that this question, I'm writing this question. Why gamma hemoglobin? Why gamma hemoglobin? Why fetal hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is found essential for fetal survival. Now, why this fetal hemoglobin is found to be essential for its survival? Why not the fetal can survive with the adult hemoglobin? What is problem with the fetus? Okay, now see, if there is a mother and the fetus is present within the mother's womb, okay, there is mother and the fetus is present within the mother's womb. Now my drawing is pathetic, but still you will have to just understand it out. So I have drawn a mother. So supposedly this is a mother, okay, and the fetus is developing within the body of the mother. This is not box, this is a mother, and the fetus is developing within the body of the mother. Then what is going to happen? Then the thing that is going to happen is that blood vesicles will carry the blood. Okay, so there would be placental coverings, placental barriers, and the blood vesicle will be carrying the blood, but the amount of oxygen in the blood will be very less, because female itself herself will also be using the oxygen. So actually female is almost providing deoxygenated blood, HbO2 ka whole twice. Okay, this is a deoxygenated blood. To avoid confusion, I am writing here only. Here, this is a deoxygenated blood that the mother provides to the developing fetus. Now, when mother is providing the deoxygenated blood to the developing fetus, then how this fetus is going to survive? Actually, because of this particular chain that is referred to as the gamma chain. Now, gamma chain of the hemoglobin, when the hemoglobin which is present in the case of fetus is 2 alpha and 2 gamma, this fetus hemoglobin has the ability to even extract oxygen molecules. It can extract oxygen molecule from the deoxyhemoglobin. Okay, so there is the oxygen can be extracted by the deoxyhemoglobin molecules. Okay, so I'm going to write the answer here. The presence of gamma, the presence of fetal hemoglobin causes the extraction of oxygen even from deoxyhemoglobin of the mother, RBCs. So the fetus can effectively survive within the mother's body. Okay, so for the effective survival of the fetus, the presence of this particular gamma chain is ideally required. If there is no gamma chain, the fetus will not be able to survive and the process of abortion will take place. So this gamma chain is highly essentially required for the entire procedure to take place. So this is essentially required. Okay, so this is essentially required for the process to take place. Okay, so this question is all over. This type of questions are being these types of questions are being asked in CSIR and other different entrance examination. You can also understand that why the child who is just born are much more effective swimmers as compared to adults, because child float in the mother's womb within amniotic fluid. So child itself has an ability to swim within the aqueous environment. That is why if a child is being born placed within water, it can naturally swim itself as compared to an adult. So this is a funny fact of science. Okay, now we are looking towards the structure of myoglobin and hemoglobin, and let us compare these structures. Myoglobin consists of 8 helical structures. Okay, it has such type of 8 helical structures, and I cannot draw all the 8 helical structures because that will take a huge lots and lots of time. Okay, oh sorry, control Y. Okay, so I cannot draw the entire structures. uh, sorry sorry but you can say that these structures have several different orientations. For example, the first helix is being written as A, the second helix is being written as B, and so going on, you will have a helix up till H. You will have a helix up till H, and the interhelical region which is present is referred to as AB interhelix. The second one is referred to as the BC interhelix. The third one would be referred to as the CD interhelix, and so on. So there are interhelical region and there are helical regions which are associated with the structure of myoglobin, and this is hemoglobin. Now, looking at the chromosome number where these have been encoded. Now, when you look at the hemoglobin is being encoded at 2 different chromosomes. That is, it has been encoded. The alpha chain of hemoglobin and the beta chain of hemoglobin have been encoded on different chromosomes. The beta chain of hemoglobin is being encoded on the chromosome number 11, whereas the alpha chain of the hemoglobin is being encoded on chromosome number 16. So अगर हम hemoglobin को divide करते हैं, then we can divide the hemoglobin into 2 different chains on the chromosomes. Alpha chain, okay, alpha cluster of genes, alpha cluster, and another one could be referred to as the beta cluster. Okay, this alpha cluster is present on which chromosome? This alpha cluster, and another one would be referred to as beta cluster. Probably I can make it somewhere here. Okay, just a second. This would be referred to as the beta cluster. So beta cluster and alpha cluster. Beta cluster is present on 11th chromosome. Okay, this is 11th chromosome. It becomes very hard to write. Okay, 11th chromosome. This is the 11th chromosome over which it is present. You must have remembered that how sickle cell anemia takes place. When it was in the case of beta globin gene, the glutamate was being replaced with valine. GAG was being replaced with valine at the 6th position. Then there was sickle cell anemia. The alpha cluster is present on the chromosome that is referred to as the 16th chromosome. Okay, 16th chromosome. We would be looking at all these structures in Pathfinder in great details in the part second book. Now, myoglobin, as you know, that myoglobin also belongs to the same globin family, but this myoglobin which is present, this is present on chromosome number 22. Okay, so it is the chromosome number 22. KK sir, please do confirm. Myoglobin is present on chromosome number 22, as I'm saying. So, so this structure of myoglobin is responsible, is present in the form of a single protein, single unique 3-dimensional structure, and that 3-dimensional structure will be able to bind to the oxygen molecule. It also has a very high affinity for oxygen molecule, and oxygen will be binding to it. So let us move to Pathfinder and look at structure animations and other things. Okay, look here. Now see, this is what I was telling you. It is a globular protein made up of a single polypeptide in nature. Okay, it is made up of a single polypeptide. Yes, it's on 22, so I was correct at that point. Now see, This is a globular protein consisting of a single polypeptide of 153 amino acid. As I told you, the interhelical regions are being designated as A, B, B, C, C, D, G, H, and there are A to H number of helical regions. There are 8 helical regions which are present, and these 8 helical regions which are present have been named as from A to H. Okay. So there is one very important funny point. I don't know whether you know or not. Now see this. Myoglobin is being encoded on chromosome number 22. Supposingly, sorry, let me redraw the structure of chromosome. Okay, if I redraw the structure of chromosome like this. Okay, so there are two arms of the chromosome. The small arm is being referred to as the P. The large arm is being referred to as the Q. So myoglobin has a specific position that is referred to as 22Q 12.3. So it has a position of 22Q 12.3. Okay, 12.3. So what is this 12.3 that we have to see? So it is present on 22nd chromosome, large R, first region, second band, and third subband. See, each and every gene in your proteins has particular location. So this first is the region and second is the band. Okay, this is the region. This is region, and the second is the band, and the last point is the subband band, and this third will be referred to as the subband. Okay, now when you look at this structures, I'm clearing all the drawings. Okay, you can note them from the recorded version that will be shared with you. Now when you look at the structure of the heme, you look at this complex structure. This is the structure of the heme which is present. Now when you are looking at the structure of the heme, the globin protein which is present here, see, myoglobin has a single heme group coordinatedly bounded by 4 pyrrole rings. These are the 4 pyrrole rings which are present, and there is the iron molecule which is present. Okay, this structure of myoglobin or that of hemoglobin consists of a common heme group, and they have evolved from the structure that is referred to as and these are referred to as the tetrapyrrole rings. Okay, so Krishna sir is answering your queries very very much, so no problem with that. I would concentrate upon my theory part. Okay, so it is made up of 4 pyrrole rings, and these are the 4 pyrrole rings which are present. First, second, third, and fourth, 4 pyrrole rings which are present. There is a coordinatedly bound the iron molecules Fe+2 structure which is being bound. So ferric iron atom is present either as Fe+2 or Fe+3 oxidized state within the porphyrin ring. Now moving forward, what you are going to get is that how does the structure of myoglobin is being produced. Now see this. Myoglobin structure consists of 2 parts. One is referred to as the globular protein, another one is referred to as the heme group. Okay, now see this. This is very important. Only myoglobin, the Fe+2 state can bind oxygen. Iron atom has 6 coordination bonds present here. This is very important. This is true for both myoglobin as well as hemoglobin. So you have to remember this. This question has been asked in different competitive examination. What has been asked here is that iron has 6 coordination bonds, 4 in plane of flat porphyrin ring and 2 perpendicular to it. So there are 4 bonds which are present and 1 is perpendicular to it. Okay, the iron atom of the heme is directly bounded to one of the histidine called as proximal histidine. There are 2 different types of histidine which are present. One is called as the proximal, another one is called as the distal histidine. Please look at the structure because this structure is very, very important. Now see, this is the structure of the myoglobin molecule. You can read all the things that I'm telling to you. I would be informing you of those which are given here. Now, if you look at this structure, I'm redrawing this structure. This structure will appear like this. Okay. This red color line indicate the helical structure of globin. Okay, this is globin. Okay, when globin is being bounded with the centrally present heme. This is heme. This is heme. When globin is being bounded with heme, then it leads to the formation of hemoglobin. But here, because there is only a single globin protein, so it is present in the case of muscles. That is why it has been named as myoglobin. Okay, myoglobin. Okay, so it has two different types of histidines, because histidine is an amino acid which is found at the active site of the enzyme, as it has an isoelectric point of 6.8. Histidine is commonly found at the active site of the enzyme because it has an isoelectric point of 6.8, a very important point that I've told you here. So you must note it down. See, there are two histidine molecules which are present. One is referred to as the one is referred to as the distal histidine. Another one is referred to as the proximal histidine. I would be again rearranging all these things. Just a second. Just a second. The first one is referred to as the distal histidine, and there is another one that is present, and that is referred to as the proximal histidine. You can see the proximal histidine at the below. Okay, so those are the two different types of histidine molecules, those which are present. Okay, now this distal histidine and proximal histidine has different locations. Which are the different location? One has a location of 64E7, another one has 93F8. So first location of this distal histidine is 64E7. Okay, it has this location. There is another proximal histidine. This histidine has a location of 97F8. 93F8, sorry. 93F8. So you look at the structure of myoglobin, and what you find is that at the 64th position, you look at the structure of distal histidine and proximal histidine. What you find is that at the 64th position in the globin protein, there is an amino acid represented by the symbol E, glutamate, and at the glutamate 7th carbon atom, a histidine molecule is being bound, that is called as distal histidine. At the 64th position of globin, glutamate is present, and at the 7th position of this glutamate, you have a histidine which is being bound, that is called as distal histidine. And here you find is that there is an amino acid that is referred to as phenylalanine. Now this phenylalanine is present at the 93rd position, and this phenylalanine at its 8th atom is being bound to another histidine, and that is referred to as proximal histidine. Both distal and proximal histidine binds with heme, and in return this heme binds with the oxygen molecule. This is how the structure of myoglobin is being oriented. If there is any query with the structure of myoglobin, please do ask. Now see, oxygen can bind here. At the time of need, the oxygen could be liberated and could be provided as energy source. They could be used in the oxidation of glucose within our muscles. Confused from to everyone, confused in the entire structure. Okay, so Namrata, you are confused in the entire structure. So let me just make it very clear to you. Confused in the entire structure, only histidine can be seen. Only histidine can be seen. What do you mean? Dear students, you are able to visualize the screen or not? Are you able to visualize the screen properly or not? Please do answer. Anybody can write in the chat box. At least I got yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Okay, so everything is being visible. Let me just repeat why you are saying, Namrata, that only histidine is visible. See what is happening. You are not able to visualize these red color lines that are being shown to you. Please do not answer. I'm talking only to one student, that is Namrata. Namrata, look here, or I'm just revising this. This again, I'm speaking to you all. You can just look here that in diagram only histidine can be seen. Where is other amino acids? Okay. Where are the other amino acids? See, actually, this is not hanging in a particular row. This is present in the form of a helical structure, Namrata, and that helical structure is that of globin. Okay, that helical structure is that of globin. And this helical structure will constitute the structure that will join this distal histidine and proximal histidine. I have redrawn the diagram. स्क्रीन के ऊपर देखिए, I have redrawn the diagram just for you so that you can understand that particular diagram. Now see over the screen, there is a red color line that I have drawn in front of you. This red color line actually is referred to as the globin protein. You cannot have two proteins hanging somewhere without binding any other molecule. So this is globin. Now just wait, I am sharing another diagram from Lippincott. It will become very clear to you. Just a second, I will have to delete this annotation. Okay, so probably we'll get the diagram from Lippincott, and that would be much more effective to you, because that will be much more easier to understand, because that diagram was being made by me rather than being made by any other national author. Just for a second, I'm looking at the structures. Let me move to that particular structure where I can get this binding of oxygen molecule. These are the globin families that you are talking about. Just a second. No, I'm not getting that structure. Just a second, Namrita. I'm looking at the structures so that it can be made much more clearer to you all. Okay, here we got it. You get the structure now. Now this could be made much more clear. See, this is what is going to happen. Now see this. This is how the structure of myoglobin. This is a model to explain the structure of myoglobin. Now please, anybody could answer. You can look at this particular structure. Anyone? Okay, you are able to visualize that the structure given in Lippincott. All of you must be able to visualize this out. Okay. Yes. So majority of you are able to visualize it out. Now you can see that there are 8 different helical structure, and these are being represented as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I told you now. Now there is a centrally present heme which is present. Now see this. This is a helical structure. Okay. Now this is the F helix and this is the E helix. They are also joined together with each other because they are present as A, B, C, D, E, and F. So E and F will be joined together with each other. Okay, Namrita? Okay, everybody. So now you can find that, see this. This is distal histidine. See this, this is proximal histidine. It has a position 64E7, 93F8, and in between them, iron is present, which is binding to the oxygen molecule. Now, this makes it very clear that this is these protein, globular protein. This is the globin part of the protein, and this is the heme part of the protein molecule. Okay, so this is the heme part, and the other is referred to as the globin part. Clearing all the drawings. Now, do it is clear to you all? Namrita, are you there? Do anyone do it is clear to you all now? Now you are able to visualize these structures. The book of Lippincott has also been shared with you, and you can read that book yourself. Okay, the page number on this book is 26. So that has been shared in your group, so you can go through its ultra structure also. Thank you. Now moving back to Pathfinder, you must always ask any query within the live class so that your queries can be answered effectively, and you can move above your queries and solve your MCQs. Okay, now moving forward, so I do think that the structure is completely clear to everyone. Now how does the interaction of this myoglobin takes place with oxygen molecule? Now see, myoglobin is a simpler globular protein in nature. Now one thing that I should clear it out in your mind is that, see, this is the structure of myoglobin. This is a simple, single, tertiary, three-dimensional structure that is present. When 4 myoglobin structures will be present, then what it is going to form? It is going to form the structure of hemoglobin. Look here what is given. Just a second. Look here what is given. These 4 different subunits, when will bind, and these 4 different subunits, see this? These are the 4 different subunits. These have heme porphyrin rings present within itself. This is the iron. Now see this. Every beta and every alpha will have such heme subunits present within itself. So there are 4 subunits, and this will lead to the formation of a structure of hemoglobin. Now this is also very, very important. What you are finding in this particular structure Can anybody illustrate? Can you think it out? That firstly myoglobin was there, and then you have a quaternary structure of hemoglobin. This means that firstly, in the case of humans, there came a single gene which was responsible for the formation of myoglobin, the gene which is being encoded on 22nd chromosome. There came a single gene, 22nd chromosome gene, which was responsible for the formation of myoglobin. But my dear friends, this gene would have undergone duplication. It was this gene, sorry, it was this gene that should have undergone duplication. This gene underwent duplication and led to the formation of 4 different genes by duplication, and that those 4 different genes led to the formation of hemoglobin. Okay, so actually the hemoglobin evolved in the form of a single gene, in the form of a myoglobin gene. Then ultimately such genes began to duplicate themselves, and as they duplicated themselves, they form hemoglobin. Okay, further, on further accumulation of mutations and accumulation of modifications within the structure of hemoglobin, there were 4 different types of hemoglobins which are being produced. So in this entire chart, it comes into your mind that how the evolution of proteins have taken place. How a simple protein such as globin protein could lead to the evolution of alpha globin, beta globin, embryonic, fetal, adult hemoglobin, or myoglobin, as well as in the case of plants about leg hemoglobin which is present. So there is a single protein. This protein diversified. This protein evolved. This protein duplicated. Their genes duplicated. Mutations were accumulated, and new proteins were being produced. So every day there are mutations which are being accumulated, and every protein is modifying itself. Every protein is being modified because their genes have been modified. So do you are able to get the point? सभी को ये point समझ में आया? Everybody has gained this particular point, that it was a single gene which came from into your body through your ancestors, and bingo, the gene got modified and led to the formation of hemoglobin. A question was there in the 2012 entrance examination from ICMR. I could share the question with you all, and you would be able to surprisingly find that it was the question about the evolution of myoglobin and hemoglobin. So I'm just sharing that question with you all. Probably I have that question. Just a second. Just a second. I'll be sharing this question with you all. Okay. So I have the paper. Okay, I'm opening the paper. Just give me a second. Just a second. I would be opening the question paper so that it becomes much more clearer to you all that how these paralogous proteins are being evolved and how does their evolution takes place in the case of humans. Okay. Just a second. Oh, I'll have to show it to you from the because yeah, I found the paper and I'm at the answer. For example, you can look here. I'm sharing another answer with you. See this. This is a question which was being asked in ICMR JRF entrance examination in 2012. And what we are going to get here is that, see how the evolution of proteins is taking place. See, homologous genes are the one that shares a common ancestor. Okay. Homologous genes falls into 2 categories. One is referred to as paralogous and another one is referred to as orthologous. There are 2 different categories of genes. One is referred to as the paralogous genes, another one is referred to as the orthologous genes. Okay, you can look here. There is a single gene. Then this gene evolved and gave rise to two different genes. They are said to be orthologous genes in two different species. For example, the ancestral globin gene gave rise to myoglobin and leg hemoglobin. Myoglobin in Homo sapiens or in mammals, and leg hemoglobin in the case of plant. So that ancestral globin gene is an example of orthologous gene. But the myoglobin gene, which came into human, later on duplicated and gave rise to the alpha globin as well as the beta globin gene. So this is an example of paralogous gene. Genes that are being formed in an individual by the duplication of a pre-ancestral gene are said to be paralogous gene. They could be easily remembered through a mnemonic. P stands for paralogous, P for pair. So genes which are present in pairs are said to be paralogous. The question was in ICMR was being asked that myoglobin and beta hemoglobin genes, which are these different types of genes? These beta hemoglobin genes and myoglobin, they are the one which are diversified and are said to be alpha and beta globin chain of the hemoglobin, whereas hemoglobin genes in different organisms that arose through species divergence are said to be orthologous. Hemoglobin genes which are present in different species, myoglobin of dog and beta hemoglobin of humans, are said to be orthologous. Okay, so this is clear to you all. Now returning back to Pathfinder, you find any query, you ask me. Okay, now how does this myoglobin binds with oxygen molecule? Myoglobin, to understand the binding of myoglobin with oxygen molecule, you should understand about the myoglobin oxygen dissociation curve. This is oxymyoglobin. This oxymyoglobin has an ability to dissociate itself. As it dissociates itself, it leads to the formation of myoglobin and liberates free oxygen. Okay, so the dissociation constant can be calculated as product upon reactants. There is a product which is being produced, and there is a reactant product which is being produced, and there is a reactant that is present. So this is the product, this is the product. So this is at the upper end, and the reactants will be present at the lower end. Okay, there are the reactants. These are the reactants which are there. Okay, so there are the products and there are the reactants which are present. So here we can calculate the product and the reactant as number of binding site occupied divided by total number of binding site present. So the number of binding site occupied means MbO2 divided by total number of binding site present is the total number of binding site occupied plus total number of binding sites that are unoccupied. So that would be the total number of binding site present. Binding site present equals to occupied plus unoccupied. So here we can calculate the percentage saturation using Y. Percentage saturation is equals to the partial pressure of oxygen divided by partial pressure of oxygen plus the dissociation constant, in which the oxymyoglobin has been dissociated into myoglobin oxygen divided by oxymyoglobin. So here this formula will lead to the formation of an equation. When we are going to take log on both the side, then it will lead to the formation of an equation, and that is referred to as the Hill's equation. Now Hill's equation will be produced. Now how does this Hill's equation helps in understanding the oxymyoglobin dissociation curve? You can look here. When all the myoglobin molecules are being bound to oxygen, the value of Y becomes equal to 1. When the value of Y becomes equal to 1, then PO2 becomes equal to PO2 plus P 50%. That means half of the myoglobin molecules will be dissociated. When all of the myoglobin molecules are being bounded, then half of the myoglobin molecules will be dissociated. When Y equals to 0.5, myoglobin is said to be half saturated with oxygen molecules. Okay. Now what you find is that this is partially saturated with oxygen molecules now. Now moving forward, you find an equation. See this, log Y divided by 1 minus Y equals to log PO2 minus log P 50%. This equation which is being produced is referred to as, yes, half will dissociate. How half will dissociate? You wanted to find it out like this? Now, please, I would be coming back to that point. Okay, I would be coming back to that point. Just a second. Now, this equation which is being produced is referred to as the Hill's equation. It has a phenomenal importance in understanding the nature of the protein. Now you take the ratio. Now I'm coming back to that particular point. A question has been raised by a student. See this. This is why is the total number of binding site occupied. So total number of binding site occupied depends upon what? It depends upon the partial pressure of oxygen. Okay. So total number of binding site occupied equals to the partial pressure of oxygen that you are taking. कितनी बाइंडिंग साइट ऑक्युपाइड है वो ऑक्सीजन के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है ना. ऑक्सीजन होगा तो बाइंडिंग साइट ऑक्युपाइड है, ऑक्सीजन नहीं होगा तो बाइंडिंग साइट ऑक्युपाइड नहीं है. सी इफ देयर इज एन ऑक्सीजन द बाइंडिंग साइट इज ऑक्युपाइड. If there is no oxygen, the binding site is not occupied. So this value clearly depends upon the presence of oxygen. So here it is PO2. Now, how many total binding sites are present? The one which have been occupied by oxygen and the one which has not been occupied by oxygen. Now, which binding site has not been occupied by oxygen? Because the entire myoglobin molecule was saturated. That means you will say, sir, every site has been occupied by oxygen. Yes, dear student, every site has been occupied by oxygen. But see, in fact, myoglobin will also dissociate, and there will be certain myoglobin molecules which will come in their monomeric form without associating with oxygen molecule. हिंदी में समझ लीजिए. देखो, मायोग्लोबिन सारा का सारा ऑक्सीजन के साथ में बाइंड कर जाएगा, मैं मानता हूं, लेकिन कुछ मायोग्लोबिन ऐसे भी तो होंगे ना जो ऑक्सीजन से बाइंड करने के बाद में टूट जाएंगे. दैट इज बीइंग रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय केडी. जो टूट गए ना बाइंड करने के बाद में, उन्हें हमने केडी से रिप्रेजेंट किया है. तो व्हाट बिकम्स आवर इक्वेशन? द इक्वेशन बिकम्स इक्वल टू partial pressure of oxygen divided by partial pressure of oxygen plus KD, dissociation constant. That means total number of binding site occupied divided by total number of binding site occupied plus number of binding sites which are unoccupied as myoglobin. So there you get this equation. Now you try to calculate the ratio of percentage of binding site occupied divided by binding site unoccupied. Now see, if you are going to say that if 90% is going to be occupied, if 90% of the myoglobin is occupied, then how much of the myoglobin is unoccupied? 10%. How you calculate it out? If you take 0.9 of myoglobin as occupied, then 0.1 is unoccupied. That means the ratio of occupied to non-occupied is being calculated. How that ratio is being calculated? Y divided by 1 minus Y. Now you take these value Y and you take another value 1 minus Y. You take another value, okay? That another value would be 1 minus Y. 1 minus Y. This would be, Y would be binding site occupied. Binding sites occupied. And what would be 1 minus Y? 1 minus Y would be binding sites unoccupied. Okay. So you calculate the ratio Y divided by 1 minus Y. And what you are going to get is this equation. Now see this, Y divided by 1 minus Y, PO2 will get cancelled. All these equations will get cancelled. And here you get another formula, and that formula is referred to as Y divided by 1 minus Y equals to PO2 divided by P50%. Now see, because there is a single myoglobin molecule, so there is no value of log. Otherwise there would be N. So there you get this equation. Now taking log on both the sides, log Y divided by 1 minus Y, log PO2 divided by P50. Log PO2 divided by P50 equals to log M divided by N equals to log M minus log N. Okay. So there is this equation that you are going to get. When you make a graph, then you are going to make a graph percentage saturation divided by oxygen concentration. Y was percentage saturation and oxygen concentration. What you are going to get? you are going to get a curve, and looking at this curve, what you are going to find is that this curve, the oxygen binding curve of the of the myoglobin molecule, you are going to find, and there is no cooperativity. It has a hyperbolic curve, whereas positive cooperativity is present in the case of sigmoid curve. This curve would be hyperbolic in nature. This is an hyperbolic curve. Okay, where it is written? Okay, here it is also written. Just a second. This curve is hyperbolic. Indicates that there is no cooperativity within myoglobin molecule. Now, what do you mean by cooperativity? Supposingly, there is one myoglobin molecule. There is another myoglobin molecule. There is another myoglobin molecule. The binding of oxygen with this myoglobin will not have any effect on the binding of oxygen with another myoglobin, and the binding with second will not have any effect on the binding with third. Okay, so this is referred to as no cooperativity. Why does we add number of unoccupied partial pressure to the number of occupied partial pressure of oxygen? Okay, see why we are going to add. When you are going to calculate, Trishla, when you are going to calculate percentage, then calculate how you calculate the percentage. You calculate the percentage by number of marks that have been obtained divided by total number of marks. Okay, now that can be calculated in this particular manner. You look here, these are mathematical assumptions actually. That is why I told you to bring copy and pen along with you so that you can solve them up. Now look here, this is number of binding site occupied. Now you can also calculate your percentage like this: number of marks obtained by X student, obtained by any student, divided by number of marks obtained plus number of marks that were chopped from his answers, that was subtracted from his answers, those which were made minus by the teacher. So if you calculate both those marks, you will be able to get the total number of marks that the student must have obtained. Okay, so this is how it is being calculated. This is how it has been calculated. This is how it has been tabulated: number of binding site occupied divided by total number of binding site present, because you are calculating the fractional saturation. Now see this word is very important. You are calculating fractional saturation. So this is very important. Fractional saturation means binding site occupied divided by total number of binding sites which are present. Okay, so that's why it is very important. Now moving forward, hopefully Trisha, you could have understood this out. Just read it twice and attend these classes effectively, you will get it. Now see, you get a hyperbolic curve like this, but this hyperbolic curve should be resolved, should be made mathematically possible, should be made mathematically or analytically possible. Now how you are going to make it analytically possible, how you are going to solve this out? We are going to solve this out by, okay, I am asking scientific reason, not mathematical reasons. Okay, you are asking scientific reason. In the case of scientific reason, when you are getting these things, then scientists were thinking that what could be the maximum limit of the myoglobin that it could be oxygenated. Okay, so how they were able to calculate that how much amount of myoglobin in your body could be oxygenated? So they calculated about the fractional saturation. Okay, so that fractional saturation was referred for any protein, for any protein, for any enzyme that is binding with any substrate. Now see, this myoglobin is an enzyme. It is a protein. Proteins are majorly enzymes. And what is oxygen? Oxygen is serving as a substrate. So what is the percentage saturation of this myoglobin? The percentage saturation of this myoglobin is that the number of oxygen molecules that have bounded divided by total number of oxygen molecules that are present. Fractional saturation of any enzyme would be total number of binding site occupied divided by total number of binding site present. So this is the formula: total number of binding site occupied in an enzyme divided by total number of binding site present in that enzyme. And if the total number of binding site becomes equal to the total number of binding site present, then we say that the enzyme has been completely saturated with substrates. This is the one that we are going to study in enzyme kinetics. This is what happens in enzyme kinetics. जब एक एंजाइम की फंक्शनिंग को पता करना होता है तो हम पता करते हैं कितनी बाइंडिंग साइट ऑक्युपाइड है डिवाइड बाय कितनी बाइंडिंग साइट प्रेजेंट है, तो उससे हम इन सारी इंफॉर्मेशन को गेन करते हैं, एंड दैट इज द साइंटिफिक रीजन दैट दिस फॉर्मूला हैज बीन टेकन. नाउ मूविंग फॉरवर्ड. Okay, thank you. So this is an hyperbolic curve. But see, there is a hyperbola and there is no end to this hyperbola. This line could be extended. This line could be infinitely extended to far places. But so there would be no end. So the scientists assume that why not to take a logarithmic curve? Because logarithmic curve have an end. Scientists ने सोचा क्यों ना हम एक logarithmic curve लेंगे. Why not to take a logarithmic curve? So they took log on both the sides. What they found is that log y divided by 1 minus y equals to log PO2 minus log P 50%. And they made a plot, and this plot was referred to as the Hills plot. Okay, this plot was referred to as the Hills plot, and the coefficient was called as the Hills coefficient. Okay, this slope was referred to as the Hills coefficient. It had a value of n equal to 1. That is Hills coefficient. Now you look at this structure. Now when there would be the same case with hemoglobin, you will have to add n because there are n number of sites which are present. So in the case of hemoglobin, it would be n log y divided by 1 minus y equals to n log PO2 minus log P 50%. Okay, there would be the n just outside the bracket. So that could be looked here in the case of hemoglobin. In the case of hemoglobin, I will not again and again go with hemoglobin because I will not revise this in hemoglobin. This is all over. You can see this. The same thing will be given in hemoglobin. See, number of partial pressure of oxygen raised to the power 4 because each hemoglobin can bind with 4 oxygen molecule divided by total partial pressure of oxygen plus P 50% when half of the hemoglobin is being saturated, or the dissociation constant. Actually, dissociation constant is measured at 50% oxygen concentration. So that is why we can write P 50% or KD. And here you will get a graph that is not hyperbolic. This graph would be S-shaped or sigmoidal in nature. And the sigmoidal nature of the graph indicates positive cooperativity. See this? The sigmoidal oxygen binding curve of hemoglobin indicates the cooperativity that is referred to as positive cooperativity. Okay. You can further look forward. See this? The equation log y divided by 1 minus y equals to n log PO2 divided by n log P 50%. Sorry, there would be no n here because this is percentage. Percentage is still number of marks obtained divided by total number of marks present. So this is something y divided percentage saturation here is number of binding site occupied divided by total number of binding site present. Here it is percentage saturation y total number of binding site occupied divided by total number of unoccupied binding site, and you get this equation. Here the value of n equals to 1 indicate no cooperativity, n is less than 1 indicate negative cooperativity, and n greater than 1 clearly indicate a positive cooperativity. Okay, this is referred to as the Hills plot. I'm just covering some of the very important lines from this Hills plot. And for hemoglobin, the value is equals to 3.6. Some authors write 4. In the old edition, it is 4 given in Pathfinder. In the new, it is 3.6 or 2.8. See this. This is positive cooperativity of hemoglobin. There is no cooperativity of myoglobin. Okay, this n is referred to as, this n is commonly referred to as the Hills coefficient. With all these things, I have finished myoglobin, I have finished hemoglobin, I have finished their binding status, how do these molecules bind, and how their binding takes place. So we would be starting with hemoglobin from tomorrow's class at the same time, at the same place. Until then, you enjoy your lectures. Just keep revising it up, sending your queries in the WhatsApp group, okay, so that we can effectively learn all these things. Okay, so thank you, thanks a lot for today. The video of today's lecture as well as tomorrow will be shared on the YouTube, and link will be provided to you. Please do like, share, and subscribe the channel. Thank you, thanks a lot. It's all over for today. Bye bye, meet you soon.